welcome to another edition of Humble Theology. My name is John still, and in this series of lessons we're looking at the book of Leviticus, but I've been spending several weeks kind of working through various introductory points before we even get to chapter 1. This is the last lesson that's, I guess you could say, an introductory piece. I want to look at the family values and family values of Leviticus before we jump into the book. I think this is very helpful when you look at Leviticus or start to consider the book, that it gives us insights. These laws give us insight into the equity or the importance or the principles of what is important to the lawgiver. What is the point behind these things? When we attempt to bring an offering or to give something back to God, we have to understand who it is we're approaching. If you have a friend and maybe they really like, baseball, but they really hate, hockey. Well, for a birthday present, you probably don't want to bring them a hockey stick. You can say, well, but it was the thought that matters. I had the intentions of giving a good gift. Yeah, but you also took no time to understand the person in whom you're supposed to be offering your gift. If God says he likes or doesn't like certain things, then it behooves us to understand that, or to ask first before we just approach him nonchalantly and say, well, I'm bringing something, he should just like it just because I have something to give. It's like, no, that's not how this works. That's not how God works. And Leviticus is absolutely going to point out this value system. Another way of looking at it is like a king, old king knights and all those types of fairy tale days. Well, I guess it wasn't extremely just fairy tales, British and Scottish, kings and lords and all that kind of stuff. Well, if the king was there and you brought before him some type of filthy, soiled, tattered rag of a gift, here's a cloak, but it's got flies coming off of it, it's so dirty. Well, that's going to be offensive to him. It's not going to be appropriate to give him. Well, how are you going to face that king? What's he probably going to do from an earthly standpoint? An earthly king is probably going to have you tortured, killed, throw out of his kingdom, something like that, throw him to the dungeons or whatever that is. The same place today, you could bring an inappropriate gift to someone today. Say it's a work setting or family setting, and you give someone, you look around the house, oh, it's my boss's birthday, I'll look around the house, oh, here's a bottle of mouthwash, I haven't opened it yet, I'll bring that and give it to him as a gift. What automatically would you think of when someone brings you a gift that obviously isn't well thought out, and it's something like mouthwash? Well, they are clearly offended by me. They think I'm offending them with, stinky breath or whatever, that I need this mouthwash. Again, it's the idea of not just giving something because you're expected to give something, but there's purpose, there's meaning, there's supposed to be intent and heartfelt interest in what it is you're giving and why you're giving it. When you give a birthday present to someone you really love and care about, you put a lot of thought, feeling, and effort into who that person is before you even go shopping, and you start making a list. What would they like? What would they not like? And that bids into, or should build into, our look and understanding of Leviticus. These people just don't say, well, I've got a God and this is what he wants, so okay, I guess I'll give it. But no, he is always held in high esteem. What is the person's heart? What is their attitude? What value do they think of me when they even bring their gift? Do they bring it joyfully? Do they bring it charitably? Do they bring it grumbling? All these kinds of things factor into our value system of how we look at laws, regulations, and who it is in a religious sense, in God's sense, that we're worshiping. What type of worship are we offering? So Leviticus is like this. It gives us the insights into the things that pleases and displeases God. We're going to see drastic differences in this. So we're going to see within Leviticus, if you've started reading, if you've read ahead, there's going to be chapters where after God lays out, here's the way to do certain things, certain people are going to do them, and God gives it the thumbs up. And other people are going to do it wrong, and God kills them immediately. So it becomes apparently important that you don't just follow the ritual just because it's there. But no, your intent behind doing it at all warrants a type of introspection as to what is your relationship with this God in the first place, that you're going to bring or offer or do something in his presence. So we get a value system established. Now, not only that, but it's an image system. So what does God want his people to be? If we're to be salt and light in the world, well, what does that look like? How are they going to be treating themselves with their interworkings? How do we treat ourselves within a church? Who do we let in? Who do we keep out? Things like that. But then also, how do we treat one another? How do we deal with our problems? How do we work these things out? And that becomes part of the picture of God's people. We're going to see different laws. One of them is about harvest. Well, when you go to harvest your land, your crop that God gave you, well, don't mow it all down. You're going to leave the borders and you're going to leave the corners. Well, why? Well, because I am the Lord your God. You're going to do this because I just plain said so. But yet there's going to be an equity behind it too. It establishes a principle of care for the poor, the elderly, or the person just traveling through the area who might need food. They don't have a Chick-fil-A to stop by, but they see your field. And if they know, oh, this is someone who believes in God, this is someone who's faithful to God's command, they did not harvest the border and the corners of their crop. They left it for me. I still have to put in the work. It's not a handout, but I can go glean some of the wheat or barley or whatever it is from that crop, and I can enjoy that as part of God's providence to me via the gift of that person. So it establishes an equitable principle of care. It also establishes the equity that the farmer that owns all of that stuff is not to be greedy. That they're not depending on the crop per se for their livelihood or for their food. They're depending on God. They look to God to fulfill their needs, not just this tangible vegetation out there growing. And for the poor, they're going to have to put in effort. If they want the free food, they have to go find it, harvest it themselves, grind it up in whatever type of work fashion that is to make their flour and then their bread and so forth. There's all these principles behind so many of the different laws and rituals that we'll see that not only point to the person and work of Christ, but really hone in on how are we as people faithfully believing and waiting upon Christ? How are we supposed to live before our God? And how are we supposed to be treating one another? I did this in another lesson, but Jesus does the same thing. In the Sermon with the Beatitudes, he goes into, well, it's not just about murder. Murder is the outward commandment, but inwardly, the equity is supposed to breathe. We're not even supposed to be hating one another. Adultery, that's the outward act. And that may be, the command, don't commit adultery. You shouldn't even be lusting after other people. You shouldn't even be coveting what they have. The depth behind the command, if we're just routinely or remotely, or I guess in our day and age we would say robotically following out the programming, following out the commands we're given, well, then we're not really adhering to the principles that are supposed to be held within those things. We're really not loving and following and walking with God in the ways He's intended. So these things, these rules, these laws, these rituals, they give us insight into the principles of where God says our heart should be in relationship to Him and our fellow man. They're not merely Old Testament passe ideals. Oh, that's so old school, we would say. It's so Old Testament old school. We don't abide by those laws and rules anymore. That was for a different time and a different people altogether. And even if Israel is reconstituted as a nation, not going to get into that argument, but as they are, well, then that's rules for them. That has nothing to do with me as a New Testament Christian in a grace age. Well, yes, it does. It's the same God yesterday, today, and forever. And conduct is conduct. And our heart before Him is our heart before Him. We are not to put our trust in wealth. We are to tithe happily, understanding that God is the one who sustains us. God's values have not changed. Therefore, His expectations of us and our values and our heart in following and loving Him and one another have not changed. Now, again, we may not follow the letter of the law and say, well, I need to build a fence then on my roof. Because I don't go up on my roof. I don't live up there. I don't spend time up on the roof the way it's designed and stuff these days. I don't follow the literal instruction, but I can look at that instruction literally, catch the equity of the principle behind it and say, you know what? There's protection of life intended in the rule to put a fence around my rooftop, to put a parapet wall around the top of my rooftop so that someone doesn't fall and get injured. I can apply that same rule of wanting to protect the lives of others when I do that on a high-rise building that does have a flat roof. I'm still going to put a fence up there, or in a work area, workers, they'll fence off an area with yellow tape or ribbon or orange mesh work. So, hey, this is a dangerous area. Don't come in here. We're going to rope this off for your protection. Or you know what? I have a pool in my backyard. And, I don't know if there's little kids in the neighborhood or not, but I'm going to put a fence around that pool because I don't want to have the chance that some kid may die by just happening to wander into my pool. Now, should they be in my backyard in the first place or whatever? No, but I'm not going to take that chance. I'm going to look at this principle of protecting life. And I can look at my property and say, how can I look at my property in such a way that it also takes into consideration the protection of life of others? So that's it for this lesson, how Leviticus will or should influence our family values and our family image. Now, by family, I mean our relationship, our covenant relationship to God. What are we as His family? As His children, how are we to act? What is His value system? And what is important and pleasing to Him? What is not pleasing and offensive to Him? These are things that Leviticus will help us work out as well. So that's it for now. Next week, we do hope to go into, or I do expect to go into Leviticus chapter 1, I think. I may have one other intro piece. We'll see. But stay tuned. Hope to see you next time, and God bless. Take care.